Welcome to MarcusG.tv. I am Chef Marcus Giuliano, and I'm a chef on a mission. Today's another mission on a chapter in the book, or part of the book that I'm writing. So, Jamie, what's today's question?
So today I wanted to ask you, I hear you talk to culinary students when you do speeches. I hear you talk to staff members at the restaurant. And when you talk to them about a job, you talk about never taking a job for the money. Can you elaborate on that and how you feel about people that maybe do take money for the job and, do take a job for the money, and just elaborate on that?
Sure. So I've never been a fan of taking a job for the money. And here's why. As a young culinary student, and wanting to gain a vast amount of knowledge, I saw a lot of people that were graduating with me, and we all had opportunities when we graduated from culinary school. And it was either to, now that you had a degree in your hand, it was either to go to, corporate America, like Marriott, places like that, or maybe institutional food service like hospitals. And those places paid more than the jobs that I was looking for. I was looking for jobs where I was going to gain more knowledge. I was looking for jobs like at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, the Greenbrier in West Virginia. I was looking for jobs that had world-class reputations, and or I was looking for jobs like from smaller restaurants that had a really renowned chef in it. Unfortunately, those jobs don't pay as much as corporate America. Unless you happen to get into a union operation, and that's a little bit different sometimes.
So what was your reasoning behind taking a job?
Okay, so after, culinary school only sets you up to get a degree and go out into the workforce and say, okay, now I have a degree, now I'm ready to really start learning, because I really don't know much after culinary school. Culinary school's theory. You learn a lot of theory, and there's some practical parts where you're in cooking labs and you're learning how to make let's say you're learning how to cook a lobster, right? You only get to cook a lobster a few times. When you go out in the workforce, you're going to get to cook a lobster thousands upon thousands of times. That's where you're really going to learn how to hone your skills. So when you go to corporate America, I like to use a Marriott, because Marriott kitchens are very succinct, and things come in packages. Things come in pre-cooked. Things come in pre-cut. I remember interviewing for an executive chef job once, and all this, they did no butchering in-house. There was nobody, and it was a big corporation. It was, I forgot what it was in Denver. Was it a Hilton or something? And there's no butcher in-house. So any student or any young culinary student that would come to there to learn how to butcher would lose that whole skill of butchering. Butchering is an extremely important part of the restaurant industry. It's how you save money and make money, and understand what's going on with yields and food costs and wastage, and how to be creative and utilize scraps. So when you go to work at a place that has basically shifted that job out into a factory, you lose those basic skills. Instead of making stocks and learning how to do the fundamentals, that's all done in other kitchens, or you buy things that are pre-made. So for instance, Marriott might buy soups that are already in a bag ready to go, instead of having somebody there making soup. Same thing with their sauces. So when you go to places that have more labor and more hands-on and more intense, of course the money typically is not as good, because that's where they have more labor. These bigger places, or these more corporate America, have everything figured out. You don't go to McDonald's to learn how to cook. You go to McDonald's to learn how to serve packaged, prepared food. So if you go to culinary school and you spend all this money in culinary school, why would you go to a place where you're going to learn how to serve packaged food as opposed to learning how to cook and expanding your fundamentals? So now I could have easily gone for the money and made a lot more money right when I graduated from culinary school, but I chose to go for the jobs where I was going to learn more. So here's what happens. You keep learning, you keep learning, you keep learning, you keep learning. Okay, now money is important. Let's get that straight. Money is important. So you have to be able to be a good, I saw kids in culinary school who had bills. They had brand new cars. I have had my car paid for in cash because I saved money and I didn't have outrageous bills. But a lot of kids nowadays, they have new cars, they have cell phones, and they have to make money, and it's just that they're already starting off on the wrong foot. They spend way too much money on a college education. They have a loan out there, and it's your return on investment versus a college. Like I went to community college, I got a $7,000 education. My return on investment versus somebody who had a $50,000 education from a culinary institute there's no comparison. I was in a way better situation to begin with, so I spent my money up front. I had no student loans. I spent my money up front in a very logical way. So when you get into the field and you start working, you have to start making money. You can go into Marriott. They see, oh wow, this guy can open packages really good, and he can serve, and he's got a head on his shoulders, he's got a degree. They're going to move you up into management and put you in their culinary ID management program and things like that. These places do, and you're going to get benefits, and you're going to be like, wow, this is great. But all of a sudden, 10, 15 years down the road, you're going to realize, man, I don't know how to cook. And when you lose your job, and this happened when I was executive chef, I had people that were in corporate America that lost their jobs that would come to me, they couldn't cook to save their lives. I'm like, here's an executive chef for 15 years at the Radisson, at the Hilton, at the place, Doubletree. These guys don't know how to cook the fundamentals. They made great money, now they're out of a job, they've been illusioned their whole career that they're a good cook. And I'm looking at them as a young aspiring chef, and I'm like, these guys just missed the boat altogether. So what I did was I went to places where I got really able to hone in my skills. I was able to learn. The money was not the big deal. Now, a lot of people say, well, you need money. Well, yeah, you need money. Then why just spend $50,000 on a culinary education if you need money? And I spent $7,000. See, so I could afford to work for less, learn more. So here's what happened. I built my career up. I started from picking a place where I was going to learn the most. Not what they paid. I was going to learn the most. And I kept going place to place where I learned more. Now, of course, when I got married and started having a family, then it was like, okay, now it's time to really make the money because I'm in a situation where I have a family, a child on the way, we want to buy a house. Now it's important. I literally went from, I moved across the country to make $11 an hour. I don't even think it was $11 an hour, Jamie. $11 an hour. We moved to Colorado after coming back from London. And I just got back from London, and I worked 6 months for free in London for Pierre Kaufman, Anton Mosman, and Paul Gaylor. And I was like, this was my like graduate work. I didn't have to pay, thousands of dollars for graduate school. I was able to go work at a Michelin 3-star restaurant and really hone my skills, and for some phenomenal restaurants and hotels in London. And it didn't cost me anything. That's how I looked at it. They weren't paying me, but that's no problem because I've equated that to my educational costs.
And also probably to your resume.
To my resume. So, of course, it builds my resume. So when we came back into the U.S., we took a job. We had job offers everywhere. We took a job in Colorado at the Broadmoor. It was $11 an hour, okay? So I spent the previous 5 years going from literally $7 an hour, $6.50, $7 an hour, to $11 an hour. Jamie and I got engaged. We got married. Now it's time to make the big bucks. It took me, Jamie, 2 years to go from $11 an hour to a six-figure income? Yes. Because now that I had all that on my resume, I was interviewing for jobs where I was beating out those same people that had 20, 30 years experience that were clueless about cooking. Some of them knew how to cook, but a lot of them were clueless about the fundamentals of cooking. And I was beating them out on interviews. So now I had my choice of high-paying jobs. And we moved back to New York. I had a six-figure job. They paid for me to relocate. They paid a headhunter to find me. And now all of a sudden, now is when I took a job for the money. But I had to build up all those incremental steps. If I went to work for a Marriott and learned how to open packages and learned how to, push numbers and things like that, I couldn't have gotten those jobs. And because I learned how to be a conscious chef, a good chef, and I learned how to work in and out of big operations, because the Broadmoor and the Greenbrier are bigger operations, and I learned how to work in small operations like the Dupuy Canal House. I was very in tune to the business part of how to make a business successful. I saw the big models, I saw the small models. I saw what was working, I saw what wasn't working. So that whole thing was an opportunity for me to be creative and really grow on more than just my cooking skills. And when I took a job at the Greenbrier, I tell the story all the time, I wasn't even 21 years old, so I couldn't drink wine legally. But I would go through the garbage every night, and the sommelier there, they had 700 wines on their list. The sommelier there would go through the bottles. We'd take the bottles of wine, the empty bottles, and I would read the labels because wine is very confusing. So I learned how to read the wine labels before I ever knew what I was tasting. So I knew if it was French, I knew what grapes were, and I knew what style it was. I knew all this, and the sommelier would go and take the time with me to do that. I couldn't have had that happen in a Marriott or somewhere else. Would have been impossible, or into an industrial and food service operation like a hospital or something. But I could have made much more money going to work in a hospital right off the bat. I could have made 10, 12 bucks instead of $6.50 an hour. See, that's the catch. So as a young student, what do? Do you almost take double for the money to pay your bills, but not to learn the fundamentals, and then realize in 10, 15 years that, wow, you missed out on a great culinary education because you couldn't travel, you couldn't, really just work at those fine places. So when it's time to make the money, the opportunity is there to make the money. I had the interviews. I had interviews left and right. I turned down more jobs than I took, and it worked out just fine. Now I'm in my own restaurant. I make far less than I made working in a country club, making six figures, but I'm so much more happier working for myself. And I do the technical side of the business sometimes, and I do the entrepreneur side of the business where I'm always into business development and how my business compares to other businesses and running my own numbers inside. That was everything I learned all along the way. And I couldn't have had the skills to run a successful business for 10 years in the middle of nowhere in a rundown, part of the Catskills if I didn't have all of that experience. So it was a valuable experience. My wine knowledge, my beer knowledge, all of that from just being in the environment and absorbing it like a sponge has paid off. I met Kevin Zraly once from Windows of the World, and he goes, Marcus, this was when I was a young aspiring chef, and he goes, Marcus, if you learn wine, you will add $10,000 to your salary. When I went to interview for executive chef jobs, and they knew I knew wine because Kevin Zraly told me that. I went to work at the Greenbrier. I studied I studied the wine in the garbage, like I said. I knew wine. I knew wine more than other executive chefs. When I opened my own restaurant, I make more than $10,000 a year because I know wine and I know beer. It's a phenomenal skill to have that I couldn't have learned working in those operations that are systematized, opening packages that paid more money in corporate America. It would have been impossible. And I used to teach culinary school. I was an adjunct professor at Sullivan where I went to school. And I told this speech to students all the time: do not take a job for the money. Take a job for the experience you're going to get, the life experience, and what you're going to apply, because you keep learning and learning as you go. I'm Chef Marcus Giuliano. I'm a chef on a mission. Today's mission: don't take a job for the money until it's time.